My entire life, I've wanted to be an engineer, for one. But Andy, you realize this could be risky. Like, you could lose all your money. But I told him this, I don't see any risk.
Sun Microsystems, the company that changed the world and then disappeared into thin air. We all know about revolutionary tech inventions like the iPhone, the computer, the internet, and the cloud. But these were the guys who made each and every one of these inventions what they are today. For example, they're the ones who created the Java programming language. While Java has declined in popularity in recent times, it's still one of the most influential coding languages in the world. It's used in everything from laptops and computers to gaming consoles, smartphones, and data centers. Not to mention, thousands of languages and platforms have been heavily inspired by Java. Likely the best example is Android. In fact, Google ended up fighting a several-year-long court battle after copying Java code into Android. But Java was just one of Sun's many innovations. Sun is also the ones behind Spark, or Scalable Process Architecture. Again, this is probably something that most of you have never heard of, but Spark revolutionized chip design. With Spark, Sun basically figured out how to triple the number of instruction sets that a given chip could handle. And it wasn't long until this technology made its way into open source projects, supercomputers, and basically became the new gold standard for chip design. Speaking of gold standards, Sun also set the gold standard when it came to enterprise software. Sun's Solaris is a Unix-based operating system that was created way back in 1993. But to this day, Solaris is the go-to OS for powering many backend infrastructures. They're basically the Windows of the backend, but all of that is just a handful of Sun's contributions. They also play critical roles in the development of virtual computers, virtualization, cloud computing, database management, supercomputers, and so much more. But despite their monumental role in tech, not many people are familiar with Sun today. This is primarily because Oracle bought Sun in 2009 and they basically killed the brand. But while the Sun brand may no longer be a thing, there's no question that their inventions and innovations will live on for decades, if not centuries. So here's the story of the company that changed the world and then disappeared, Sun Microsystems. Taking a look back, the story of Sun Microsystems can be traced back to the early 1980s to a Stanford PhD student named Andy Bechtolsheim. Andy was nothing less than a tech genius. At Stanford, his main project was creating a powerful network that could link the various departments of the university. He called this network the Sun Workstation, with Sun standing for Stanford University Network. This network was extremely complex for the time and required several managers, engineers, and support staff, but it also linked together computers like never before. Fun fact, two of these managers would steal this tech and create Cisco, which would go on to become the world's largest company, but that's a whole nother story. Going back to Andy, while he was a genius, we can't give him all the credit, as he did have a bunch of help from our good old friends, Xerox. Xerox was honestly just idiots. They had no conception of what intellectual property was or why they should protect IP. One of the most notable examples of this was their no-fee consultant program. Essentially, instead of paying consultants with cash, Xerox opted to give consultants free access to their research. Almost instantly, the Sun Workstation attracted a bunch of scientists and engineers who were willing to pay big bucks to use the workstation. So Andy would nonchalantly price licenses to his workstation at $10,000 each. That's equivalent to $33,000 today. Little to say, Andy was racking in the dough in 1981, and it wasn't long until he drew the attention of a few MBA graduates, Vinod Khosla and Scott McNeely. Basically, they told Andy, "What you have here is great, but join us and we can make this revolutionary." That's exactly what they did. On February 24, 1982, the trio would establish Sun Microsystems based on the Sun Workstation. Bill Joy was one of the first employees to join the company, and he has since been credited as a co-founder as well. And with that, Sun was in business. They began selling their Sun 1 and Sun 2 workstations, which were largely inspired by Andy's original workstation, and let's just say, these sold like hotcakes. Basically, every university in the world wanted one of these workstations, leading to $8 million in sales in just the first year alone. Also, we should note that unlike many startups today that burn money for decades, Sun achieved profitability within its first quarter. This gave them quite a bit of leverage when it came to recruiting the best talent. One of their first hires was Eric Schmidt and Carol Bartz. If you're not familiar with these two, Eric would go on to be the CEO of Google, and Carol would go on to be the CEO of Yahoo. So, Sun had a pretty strong team to say the least, but they were just getting started. Virtually all of their revenue was coming in from universities and research institutions, and while that was already super lucrative, they knew that the real money was with companies, and that was their real target. Hearing about all of these super successful people, I know a lot of y'all wonder why they never stopped to just enjoy life. For example, why did Elon gamble his PayPal money on Tesla and SpaceX, and why is he still working 120 hours every single week? Well, I don't know the answer to that, but what I do know is that one of Sun's founders, Vinod Khosla, would do exactly what y'all have been dreaming about. Just 2 years after founding Sun, at age 29, Vinod would become a multi-millionaire, and he straight up just retired. After that, he would just spend his time investing in startups, which has made him a multi-billionaire. So, looks like Vinod was able to get off the hedonic treadmill early on, but the rest of Sun was just getting started. Sun would turn their focus onto design companies that relied on CAD models, specifically computer vision. Computer vision already had a contract with Sun's biggest competitor, Apollo Computer, but Sun wasn't willing to accept this as a lost opportunity. They would aggressively pitch Sun and make offers over and over and over again until Computer Vision finally agreed to give them a shot. For Computer Vision, Sun was just one of their dozens of back-end partners. But for Sun, this partnership was game-changing as it established them as a reputable player. Other companies started thinking, if Sun is good enough for computer vision, it must be good enough for us too. And this was exactly the push Sun needed to break into the enterprise market. There was only one more major market left: governments. In 1984, Sun would open a new subsidiary called Sun Federal, and it accomplished exactly what you would think. It sold workstations to government. And given that Sun already had quite a bit of notoriety among schools and companies, breaking into the government market wasn't too challenging. In fact, by 1991, Sun was delivering over half of all workstations ordered by local, state, and federal governments. All of this allowed Sun to become the fastest growing American company between 1985 and 1989, averaging growth of 145% per year. This meant that Sun was able to achieve $1 billion worth of revenue within just 6 years of being founded. Clearly, Sun had become a serious company that had a stronghold in a multitude of markets. But it's what Sun would do next with all of this influence and power that really made them legendary. As companies mature, they usually get greedier and greedier. They become enthralled in trying to maximize market share, maximize profits, and maximize the stock price. Of course, Sun also wanted to accomplish this, but giving back to the tech world was arguably of equal importance for them. One of their first revolutions was the Network File System, or NFS, in 1984. Before NFS, file sharing systems were usually limited to specific processors and specific operating systems. Companies did this to maximize the sales of their own hardware, similar to what Apple does today. But Sun threw this ideology completely out the window with NFS. NFS allowed for data sharing regardless of processor type, OS, or communication system. Unsurprisingly, this became the industry standard within no time, leading us to SPARC. Until the introduction of SPARC, virtually all chips were built on CISC, or Complex Instruction Set Computing Architecture. SPARC, however, was based on RISC, or Reduced Instruction Set Computing Architecture. RISC was not only more powerful and cheaper, but more importantly, it was magnitudes more scalable. So switching to SPARC-based workstations was a no-brainer for customers. But Sun didn't just stop right there. Naturally, when you have control of such technology, you'd want to patent the hell out of it and make sure that no one else gets access to it. But Sun would do the exact opposite. In fact, Sun would begin licensing their RISC design to other chip makers for cheap prices before they even launched their own RISC-based workstation. Their reasoning was that if they really wanted to push forward the tech industry and make RISC the new standard, they needed all the help they could get. And it doesn't stop right there either. Sun would actually go on to hand over the rights to Spark to a non-profit organization that was jointly owned by a bunch of computer companies. To be honest, I can't think of another tech giant that's voluntarily given away such technology since then. Let me know if you can think of one in the comments below. Anyway, all of this brings us to Sun's most notable contribution, Java. Java was the brainchild of Sun engineer James Gosling with substantial support from Sun CEO Scott McNealy. Scott believed that personal computers were just a blip in history and that the real invention was network computing. Back in the 1990s, he predicted that everything from refrigerators and telephones to credit cards and door locks would all be connected by a network. He wanted all the backend infrastructure that was powering these technologies to run on Java, and to accomplish that in classic Sun style, he would open source Java. Let's just say, Scott was spot on with his vision, and he more than accomplished his goal with Java. It looks like giving away all this tech didn't take away from Sun throughout the 1990s, as Sun would achieve a peak market cap of $200 billion. But unfortunately, the sun would eventually set. The bottom line is that all of Sun's generous sharing eventually came back to bite them. You see, even though Sun open-sourced a bunch of their greatest tech throughout the 1990s, it didn't really hurt them then because companies would opt to buy the official Sun version of their product. This was thanks to loads of VC funding and entrepreneurs with sky-high visions. But after the dot-com bubble popped, this reality quickly crumbled away. All of a sudden, the cheaper workstations from Dell and IBM based on the same tech seemed a lot more attractive. So customers ditched Sun in droves, and as Sun tried to compete against these lower-cost alternatives, their profit margins would get slashed, driving them into unprofitability. Pretty soon, Sun fell from being the market leader with a $200 billion valuation to being the drowning giant that needed a bailout. IBM would offer $7 billion for Sun, but it was Oracle that ended up snatching the company for $7.4 billion. Once Oracle took over though, the soul of Sun was basically destroyed completely. Instead of keeping up Sun's tradition of contributing to and advancing the tech world, Oracle would focus on milking Sun for maximum profit. But can you really blame them? Sun had already tried to do the right thing and make technology as accessible as possible. But while this strategy worked out fine during good times, as soon as bad times hit, they were the first to get slaughtered. And that's the story of the company that changed the world and disappeared. Were you guys familiar with Sun Microsystems? Comment that down below. Also, drop a like if you respect Sun for trying to do something that no other tech company has dared to attempt. And of course, consider checking out our Discord community to suggest for video ideas and consider subscribing to see more questions logically answered. But until then, I'm Hari, and I'll see you guys on the next one.